demise. Yet what has to be the most compelling piece of evidence, fortunately still in view to suggest giants did indeed once exist, are footprints found all over the globe, once laid down upon sediment, now fossilized into solid stone. These footprints range in size up to a few meters in length, indicating that humans, at some point in the distant past, may have been even larger than many dinosaur species. This would have undoubtedly given them the capability to have moved the ancient megaliths we often cover, and also the ingenious nature of many of said sites due to a larger brain. Are these footprints proof that we too, just like the modern bird, were once monstrous in size? Yet at some point within antiquity, experienced a similar or the same cataclysmic events which forced a shrinking of our mass over many generations. Could this de-evolution have been due to what titled the axis of the Earth? When our Earth was aligned, did it have the ability to provide and sustain such growth? Once providing a suitable habitat for an abundance of resources required for the far greater size food chain witnessed during the Jurassic period? We find the evidence to support the hypothesis of giant ancient humans highly compelling. Chachapoyas is an ancient city, once effortlessly mingled among the mountains of northern Peru. At an elevation of 2,335 meters, it is still an inhabited location that was once the home of a little-known or indeed understood enigmatic civilization known as the Cloud People. Situated in the mountains far from the Peruvian coast, although this didn't apparently stop them somehow creating elaborate jewelry from seashells, Chachapoyas remains extremely isolated to this day. Only ever accessed by enthusiastic hikers, adventurers, and airlifted scientists, it is a site like many others we have covered which dot our planet, that, through our own research, has been revealed to have a contradictory explanation for their construction. Indeed, these sites are dated too, and subsequently tagged to convenient culprits. We have not only found compelling evidence to suggest that this most isolated, once thriving location is one of the oldest pre-Incan relics anywhere in Peru, but that the datings of such sites is often a funded conspiracy rather than a reality. Los Pinchudos is an elaborate Chachapoya tomb complex, molded into a high rock face. It is a natural and cultural World Heritage Site, and is guarded 365 days of the year and closed off to all except specific scientific exploration. What is remarkable about the site is the fact that the wooden statues marking the tombs have mysteriously survived the ages. These statues were used by academia to date the site. However, although the explanation for the statue's survival is apparently, quote, an arid climate, end quote, the actual site displays evidence of a far greater antiquity than these timber ghosts. Wooden artifacts rarely survive the humidity found within the Peruvian mountains, and although scientists attribute the figure's preservation to the site's location in an arid climate, the site, when discovered, was in such disrepair, an emergency conservation effort was launched to save it from further erosion. Many believe that the tombs would have been lost completely without Church and Peruvian conservator Ricardo Morales Gamarra, who restored the eroding foundations. The clay and stone tombs of the complex also have wooden roofs and have surviving Inca paint in red, yellow, black, and white. We feel, due to the other compelling evidence that has been gathered and subsequently shared upon our channel, along with the extensive erosion found at many of the sites attributed to the Chachapoyas, that there may be a high chance that the wooden roofing and statues commemorating the graves may have been another conservation effort, performed by people placed more recently within history, people modern academia claim as the original builders. Is it possible that with the extensive erosion evident at the site, in contrast to the highly preserved and seemingly recent wooden monuments and protective roofing, that we are actually looking at more than two building phases upon these tombs? An original construction, followed by a later Incan conservation effort, and then a modern correction? We find the evidence to suggest such highly compelling. In our previous video, we presented a hypothesis, a theory believed by many, one of a now lost or possibly hidden race of ancient giants. Surprisingly, however, recently, although China is seen as an infamously secretive country with many tombs and ancient pyramids of gargantuan proportions rarely aerial photographed, let alone explored, it seems that they have, at last, stolen the archaeological world stage with the announcement of a discovery which we may relish, but those whom these remains rest just beyond the clutches of, we would presume rather get a hold of themselves to study and then store away in hidden archives, far from public view, an ongoing effort we have personally read of, dating back to the early 1900s. An ancient graveyard, complete with over 500 giant human remains, has not only been accidentally discovered, but publicly exhumed, and most crucial of all, photographed for all the world to see within China. Could this be a retaliatory move with other motives at play? If our previously mentioned theory is true, it would enable man to explain the inexplicably, seemingly impossible size of many of the world's megaliths, and indeed still standing megalithic structures of the world. How a pyramidal, treasury, and many other ancient architectures' lintels and top stones, often weighing many hundreds of tons, were not only transported from quarries many hundreds of miles, but placed aloft many meters with seeming ease. Furthermore, we have in the past not only postulated and have also presented reams of witness testimony and photographic corroboration, still to be found in newspaper archives across the Western world, describing these finds, but also the Smithsonian's efficiency in not only dealing with the matter, but disappearance of any further reporting, thus expiration. This also supporting the reason for lost pieces of the puzzle which is inhibiting us from unlocking the secrets to these sites' construction. Perhaps we may never know the true motivations for such a controversial exposure in China, but nonetheless, the resulting fallout of proof presented for our community is a step closer to the truth, the untangling of a tired and tangled web of lies in which many have weaved. For at the bottom of Pandora's box, there is always hope.
We've often covered the perplexing finds of giant skeletons, which have been repeatedly reported all over the world. We delved into the rumors and evidence of a considerable conspiracy surrounding the Smithsonian Institute and their cover-up of these remains. However, thankfully, it seems modern technology has made this job virtually impossible, and the evidence which has surfaced over the last few decades has finally been getting the publicity it deserves. For example, curious remains guarded by a humble priest from a small village within Ecuador have finally been allowed to see the light of day, and the true extent to this astounding cover-up is beginning to be revealed. Father Carlos Vaca has protected remains of ancient beings for many decades, and upon examination, it was found that they once belonged to people of over 7 meters in height. Apparently, the remains had been discovered from a site called Changaminas in Ecuador, and curiously, Changaminas translates as God's Cemetery. Although reports have surfaced from within Ecuador for over a century regarding finds of similar scales, this is the first time that such remains have remained within the public domain. The Mystery Park in Interlaken, Switzerland, for example, has held since 2004 a reconstruction of a 7-meter specimen of an apparent human being that would have been just over 7 meters in height that was found within Loja. According to Father Carlos Vaca, the remains which he had successfully safeguarded until a time of his own death were given to him by Father Crespi, a figure who collected a vast array of perplexing, highly controversial, and incredible artifacts, including remnants of a puzzling metal library we have previously covered. Unfortunately, upon the event of Father Crespi's death, his collection was ransacked, replaced with clear forgeries and cheap fakes. However, it seems Father Carlos Vaca may have kept some of these artifacts safe until his own death in 1999. upon which they luckily sank into the archives of the Ecuadorian Museum. Are these remains really that